When someone suddenly goes silent around you, do you actually know what they're doing? Yes, it seems normal. People get busy, people get tired, people have things going on. But behind that silence, there's something deeper that most people completely miss. It's one of the most psychologically loaded things a person can do. And if you misunderstand it, which most people do, you could be walking into a trap that was set for you long before you ever noticed. You could be losing your power in a relationship, a friendship, or even at work. And you won't see it happening until it's too late. Because silence doesn't just fill a room. It fills your mind. It fills your self-doubt. It fills the gap between what you think is happening and what is actually going on. And by the time you figure it out, the damage is already done. Most people never figure it out at all. They just keep reacting to the silence without ever understanding what it was designed to do. They keep losing ground and relationships they thought were equal. They keep giving away power they didn't know they had. Let's start with what silence really means. So why does someone actually go silent around you? Most people assume it's simple. They're busy. They're in a bad mood. They've got a lot on their plate. Maybe they just don't feel like talking today. End of story. But here's the thing. If being busy was the real reason, they'd still respond eventually. They'd send a quick text. They'd give a nod. They'd say something. Even the busiest person alive still communicates with the people who matter to them. They find time. They make time. We've all seen it. Someone who tells you they've been too busy to reply but somehow has time to post on social media, laugh with coworkers, or chat with someone else right in front of you. So if someone has the energy to talk to everyone around them, but goes quiet specifically around you, that's not exhaustion. That's a decision. That's a choice they made. And they made it for a reason. Because real silence, the kind that lingers and sticks and makes you feel something in your chest, is never about being tired. It's about control. They are pulling back their presence to see how you respond. They are watching. They are measuring. They are waiting to see what you do when the warmth disappears. Seneca once warned that the greatest power a person holds over you is the power you don't realize they have. And silence, when used this way, is invisible power. It moves through your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, and you never once see the hand behind it. You just feel the weight. You just feel the confusion. You just feel the slow, quiet pull to try harder, reach out more, and do whatever it takes to close that gap they created. And by the way, if someone who used to be warm, talkative, and open with you suddenly goes cold and quiet, don't brush it off. We'll get into what that really means at the end, and it's something most people wish they'd understood sooner. Have you ever noticed something strange that happens right before someone goes silent on you? There's usually a moment, a shift. Maybe they were perfectly fine yesterday. Maybe you had a completely normal conversation just hours before, and then, without any warning, the wall goes up. The energy changes. The replies stop. The warmth drains out of every interaction. That's not random, it's calculated. Psychologists have a name for this kind of behavior. It's called a withdrawal probe. It's a technique, sometimes conscious, sometimes instinctive, where a person removes their attention, their affection, or their communication on purpose to study how the other person reacts. Here's what most people don't realize. When someone goes silent, they're not just being quiet. They're running an experiment on you. They want to measure your emotional dependence. They want to see if you'll chase them. They want to see if you'll panic. They want to know how much empty space you'll fill with your own anxiety once they step back. The silence is the bait. Your reaction is the data. And every time you reach out first, every time you send that extra message, every time you ask, "Is everything okay?" you're giving them exactly what they wanted. You're confirming that their absence has power over you. This is also why it feels so deeply personal when someone goes quiet on you. You're not imagining things. Your gut is picking up on something real. That discomfort sitting in your stomach isn't weakness. It's your instincts recognizing that something in the dynamic has shifted, even when your mind hasn't caught up yet. Your body knows before your brain does. And that's the most unsettling part, because most people don't trust that feeling. They talk themselves out of it. They tell themselves they're being dramatic or overthinking it. But you're not. What you're sensing is real. The withdrawal probe works precisely because most people refuse to believe it's happening. They give the silent person the benefit of the doubt every single time. And every single time that doubt becomes the very thing that keeps them stuck. Ever wonder why some of the most powerful leaders in history rarely spoke first? Maybe it's the general who sits at the war table without saying a word, while everyone around him panics and argues. Maybe it's the CEO who lets a long, uncomfortable pause hang in the middle of a meeting, watching to see who breaks the silence first. Maybe it's that one person in your friend group who sits back, says almost nothing, and somehow still controls the entire conversation without ever opening their mouth. That pattern isn't random, it's strategic. Here's something that might surprise you. The use of silence as a tool of dominance goes back thousands of years. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals that a person who speaks less than they observe will always hold the advantage. He understood something most people never learn. Words reveal your position. Silence conceals it. And the person whose position is hidden is always the one with more power. He practiced this himself, in rooms full of senators, generals, and advisors, all trying to win his approval. He would simply listen. He would watch. And in that stillness, he learned more about the people around him than any conversation could have revealed. Watch how someone uses their silence with you. If they go quiet after a disagreement, they're not surrendering. They're letting you sit in your own uncertainty while they stay perfectly calm. If they go silent right after you share something personal, they're weighing what you've revealed. They're filing it away. If they go quiet when you need them most, they're testing how far they can pull back before you come running. Each version of that silence tells you something different about their intentions. And once you learn to read it, you'll never experience silence the same way again. Robert Greene wrote about this in his Study of Power. He observed that those who control the tempo of a conversation, including the pauses, always control the outcome. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the most concentrated form of it. And the person who wields it well doesn't need to raise their voice, argue their point, or prove anything. They just go quiet. And the world around them adjusts. And hey, if this is making you see silence differently right now, smash that like button and subscribe. It's the best way to help us reach more people who actually care about understanding the psychology behind everyday life. Does the person in your life go completely cold and cut off all communication? Do they give short, clipped responses but never fully disappear? Do they go silent only in specific situations, like after you set a boundary or after something good happens to you? Or do they cycle between warmth and silence in a pattern that repeats over weeks or months? Each of these is telling you something completely different. Let's start with the total shutdown. This is the most aggressive form. The person removes themselves entirely. No texts, no calls, no acknowledgement that you exist. This tells you they are using silence as punishment. They want you to feel their absence so deeply that you'll do almost anything to get their attention back. They are counting on your discomfort to drive you toward them. And the longer it goes on, the more you start to question yourself instead of questioning them. That's the trap. The punishment only works if you believe you deserve it. Now the short response version. This person hasn't fully disappeared, but they've drained all warmth from their words. A one-word reply, a dry, okay. A response that technically counts as communication, but carries nothing behind it. This form is quieter, but it's just as deliberate. They want you to feel the distance without giving you anything concrete to point to. It's silence with plausible deniability. You can't accuse them of ignoring you because they did reply, but you can feel the emptiness in every word they chose not to say. What about situational silence? This one is sharper than most people think. If someone only goes quiet after you stand up for yourself, or right after you share good news about your life, that's not a coincidence. It's strategic. They are withdrawing warmth in the exact moments when you don't need them, because your independence or your joy threatens their position. So they pull back to remind you that their approval isn't guaranteed. They're training you, slowly, to associate your own success with their disapproval. Over time, you might even start dimming yourself just to keep the peace. You stop sharing your wins. You stop celebrating out loud because you've learned through their silence that your happiness comes at a cost. And then there's the cycle. Warmth, closeness, connection, laughter, and then without warning the cold, the distance, the wall. Days or weeks later, they come back as if nothing happened. That's the strongest statement of all. They want you locked in a loop where you never feel stable. They want your emotional baseline to be uncertainty, and as long as you stay confused, they stay in control. Have you ever noticed that you start acting differently around someone who goes silent on you? You're friendlier. You're more careful with your words. You text them first even though they never reach out to you. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said something wrong. You start second-guessing yourself. You become more compliant, more agreeable, more eager to fix a problem you might not have even caused. You start walking on eggshells. You choose your words more carefully. You monitor your own tone, your own energy, your own presence, all in an effort to prevent the silence from coming back. And the worst part is, you don't even realize you're doing it. It happens so gradually that it feels normal. That's not a coincidence. It's a behavioral shift they engineered. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by our judgments about things. And when someone goes silent, your own judgment starts working against you. You fill the empty space with blame. You fill it with self-doubt. You fill it with the assumption that you must have done something to deserve this treatment. Researchers studying intermittent reinforcement found that unpredictable responses create the strongest emotional bonds. It's one of the most bold documented findings in behavioral psychology, and it explains why silence is so effective as a tool of control. The same way a slot machine keeps you pulling the lever because you never know when the reward is coming. A person who cycles between warmth and silence keeps you emotionally hooked because you never know which version of them you're going to get. You keep trying because part of you remembers the good version. Part of you believes that if you just say the right thing or act the right way, the warmth will come back. And that belief, that hope, is what keeps you trapped. Think about that for a second. Your entire emotional pattern, built over years of learning how to connect with people, gets rewritten just because someone decided to stop talking to you. Ever had a rough week, a bad day, a moment where everything felt heavy, and noticed that someone chose that exact moment to go even quieter on you? Right when you needed support, right when you needed clarity, right when you needed stability, they pulled further away. That's not a coincidence. They knew something was wrong before you even said a word. People who use silence strategically are often deeply observant. They pick up on signals that most others miss entirely. A slight change in the tone of your voice, a hesitation before you speak, the way you carry yourself when you're stressed. They see the small shifts in your energy. They notice when your confidence drops. They notice when your guard comes down. They don't always know the exact details of what's happening in your life, but they can feel when something is off. And that's when the silence hits hardest. Because when you're already vulnerable, silence doesn't just sting. It destabilizes. It strips away your footing right when you need it most. You start wondering if you did something wrong. You start blaming yourself for a distance you didn't create. And while you're busy looking inward, trying to figure out what went wrong, they're watching you unravel. They don't have to say a word. Your vulnerability does all the work for them. And here's where it gets even deeper. Someone who has been around you long enough isn't just using silence randomly. They've been studying you. They've been learning your patterns. They know how you act when you're confident. They know how you act when you're insecure. They know what your emotional baseline looks like. And when something shifts, they notice. That time they've spent around you isn't just closeness. It's intelligence gathering. They understand your rhythms better than you might understand them yourself. And they know exactly when to pull back and when to return to create the maximum emotional impact. The silence isn't random. It's personalized. It's designed for you. What does it mean when someone who has been silent suddenly starts talking to you again? This is what I mentioned earlier, and it's something everyone needs to understand. If someone has been cold, distant, and quiet for days, weeks, or even months, and then one day they come back, warm, friendly, acting like nothing ever happened, don't just accept it. Question it. Look at it closely. Examine it carefully. People are creatures of pattern. When they break a pattern this significant, they're trying to accomplish something. Sometimes the reason is strategic. They got what they wanted from the silence. Maybe you chased. Maybe you apologized for something you didn't do. Maybe you proved through your actions that you'll always come back no matter how they treat you. The silence did its job. It confirmed your loyalty, so now they can afford to be warm again. Until the next time they need to test you. Other times, it's need-based. They need something from you. A favor, emotional support, validation, access to something you provide that they can't get anywhere else. The warmth returns because they have a use for you again. You'll notice how attentive they suddenly become, how interested they are in your life, how present they feel. It almost makes you forget the weeks of cold silence. Almost. But once that need is met, watch closely. The silence will come right back. It always does. And sometimes, and this is the version that does the most lasting damage, it's cyclical. They don't even fully realize they're doing it. They run on a repeating loop of closeness and withdrawal, connection and coldness. There's no master plan. There's no end game. There's just the loop. And with every cycle, your tolerance for poor treatment grows a little wider. You accept a little more. You expect a little less. You start to believe that this is just how relationships work. And before you know it, you've built your entire emotional life around someone else's pattern of silence. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts are constantly circling around someone who withholds their presence from you, your inner world starts to reflect that absence. You become shaped by what's missing instead of what's there. You start measuring your own value by how much attention someone gives you, and that is a dangerous place to live. Because when your sense of self depends on someone else's willingness to speak to you, you've handed them a kind of power that no one should have. The Stoic response is not to chase, not to beg, not to fill the silence with your own panic. The Stoic response is to observe, to see the pattern clearly, to name it for what it is, and to decide, with full clarity, whether this silence deserves your energy or your exit. Because awareness changes everything. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you understand that silence is a tool, you stop being afraid of it. You stop chasing it. You stop trying to fill it with your own noise. You let it sit there. You let it exist. And in that stillness, you find something they never expected you to find. Your own power. You don't control whether someone speaks to you, but you absolutely control whether their silence controls you. Because that silence, it was never meaningless to them, and it shouldn't be meaningless to you either.